who do you think will break out this year?
Okay, so whenever you mentioned that this is what we were going to discuss for the podcast, I
Mm-hmm.
had to take a step back and think about all of the players from different positions, and I tried my best to be as fair as possible.
Mm-hmm.
However, I did choose two offensive guys and one defensive guy. I'm going to kick off with my defensive player, who is Isaiah Simmons. He is
Ooh.
was
Mm-hmm.
a very highly
Yep.
recruited draft pick, a draft
Mm-hmm.
prospect last year. He was drafted first overall, first in the first round, the eighth overall pick, and went to the Arizona Cardinals. And he came out of Clemson and was recruited because of his hybrid capability on defense. This was a player who could play at linebacker, yes, but also safety and edge rusher. And for that, a lot of teams were very enthusiastic about having him and researching into him because of his talents and his capabilities. However, the hype and everything that went into him during the draft didn't really translate into his first year.
Mm-hmm.
He had a very, very tough week one debut against
Mm-hmm.
your 49ers, giving up a
Yep.
76-yard touchdown to Raheem Mostert, and
Yep.
then didn't really find his feet until week 7 when he intercepted Russell Wilson in overtime to set up a field goal attempt.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the season didn't really take off for him. And so, for me, I think this next season will really see the true Isaiah Simmons once he has his feet wet in the NFL. What are your thoughts on that pick, Ross?
That's a very good pick, Zach. Isaiah Simmons isn't someone who actually came to my mind because, he is a high draft pick. He was up there, I think, in the top 10. And
Yeah.
he's a hybrid player. He actually, coming out of college, they weren't even sure where he was going to fit on the defense. He could play safety, he could play linebacker, not unlike our man Manuel Nagy,
Yes,
who
exactly.
we interviewed last week. He's kind of that hybrid player. But, he has a lot of expectations on him this year. And as you said, I think, he probably will pull through in the end, but it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting story.
Definitely.
I'm going to move over now to my player that I've got. Now we're going to move to the offensive side of the ball, the offensive. And so we look who had the number one pick this year, the Jaguars. Okay, Trevor Lawrence, of course he had to be that number one pick. But we look at the team he has around him and the offense he has around him. Who are the wide receivers that are sticking out in that team? I'll tell you who I think it is. Laviska Shenault out of Colorado Boulder University. He's a guy that he had actually quite a good rookie season last year. But you have to remember who was throwing him the ball. It was Mike Glennon. Now, you can say what you want about Mike, but let's all kind of agree on the fact that he isn't a franchise quarterback. We'll put it like that. He's only 22 years old and he's still young. He's going into his second year. And as a rookie, he had 58 receptions, 5 TDs, and 600 yards. He'll benefit massively from Trevor Lawrence coming into that offense. I would imagine that those stats will be times by at least 2. Laviska Shenault will be a Pro Bowl wide receiver after this year is said and done.
Ooh, that's a bold take there from Ross.
Yep.
And we'll see this time next year whether you were right. I do agree. I think the Trevor Lawrence effect that will affect everybody in Jacksonville, but it definitely will help his offensive weapons. And it definitely matters who's throwing the ball, and that sort of takes off. I'm going to take off where you led there, and I'm going to float another player who I feel is in the similar position, and I'm going to choose Darnell Mooney from Chicago, drafted last year in the 5th round at the 173rd pick. He came from Tulane, which is in New Orleans, Tulane College. And in my opinion, I think the Bears have found a gem. His rookie season, yes, he had difficulties and didn't really put much up for you to attract your eye. 61 receptions with 631 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. No, it's nothing to wow you by, but he did prove himself to be capable of going head to head with the best defenders in the league. Go and look up him versus Jalen Ramsey in their matchup. He juked and crossed right Jalen Ramsey out of his shoes. And Jalen Ramsey, as you know, is a dog. So
I do.
In my opinion, he's proven himself a number 2 wide receiver behind Allen Robinson. And, it was a tough year for the Bears. Not just on offense, but just completely. You had your troubles with quarterback. Nick Foles was there for a minute. Then the next minute, Mitchell Trubisky was in as well. And so for me, I think with the drafting of Justin Fields, you're going to have a bit more, a concrete solution to that problem. And I think Fields is going to love Darnell Mooney. And so I think he's going to have a great second year in the NFL.
That's a really good shout. Darnell Mooney is one of those guys that has been knocked about the conversation a wee bit for even kind of offensive rookie of the year. I heard some people even putting it as far as that. Let's kind of go over to the other side of the ball again. A player who was maybe put forward for defensive rookie player of the year last year. He's on a defense with a guy that went 2nd overall in last year's draft. Chase Young. It's not now hold your horses. It's not him. Chase Young took most of the headlines at Washington last year, let's admit. But let's look to the secondary for a minute for Washington. A major player in that secondary, Cameron Curl.
Ooh.
He's out of Arkansas. He's a safety. And he's a legend. Oh my goodness, watching him play. Even in the playoffs, he had a massive game against the Bucs. Very, very impressive rookie season. Finished the season with 88 total tackles, 2 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 1 touchdown. Now, to be honest, that's a pretty good year in itself.
Not bad.
If he takes that jump this year, I don't want to know where he ends up. This man could be wrecking dreams. 2021, he goes from good to great this year, and I think he will be one of these guys that just kind of put themselves in the same shoes as maybe like in 5 years' time, he could be in the same shoes as like an Earl Thomas or a Cam Chancellor. Or, Washington are known for their good defensive line, and they don't get a lot of credit, in the secondary. But this is a guy that deserves credit, and Cameron Curl, I would watch out for him this season.
Ooh, see, that's someone I definitely did not think of, but I like it, Ross. I like it, and so for that, I'm on the hype train with him, and that sort of takes me on to my next guy, a guy who I joined the hype train on in his rookie season. He was drafted 32nd overall, the last pick in the first round to the Kansas City Chiefs, coming from the national championship winning LSU. His name, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or as I like to call him, the Fresh Prince of Helaire. He was a guy.
I like that.
Yeah, you like it?
I like that. Put that on a t-shirt.
I'm getting that copyrighted. He was a guy who, whenever he was drafted, I heard the hype on Good Morning Football on NFL Network. He's not just a running back. He's a receiver who can play running back. And so for that, I bought in. I even have to admit, I may have spent my first overall or my first round draft pick on fantasy and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which maybe looking back wasn't the greatest decision. However, after week 1, I was feeling pretty good about myself. He had a fantastic debut on Thursday night against the Texans, finishing with 138 yards and 1 touchdown. However, from there on, he finished the season with 803 yards, 4 touchdowns, 297 receiving yards and a touchdown. And after week 7 against the Bills, which was his last real standout game, the Chiefs sort of turned to their absolute stud of a quarterback in order to win games and threw the ball. And so for that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire never really found his footing. But why I like him so much is because I think that after a season in which COVID disrupted him, all these guys are rookies, and this is the reason why I've picked rookies, is because you put yourself in that position. Imagine that you are coming into the NFL. You need every chance of preparation you can before you take field in September for your first NFL game. These guys played with disrupted OTAs, virtual walkthroughs. They didn't have preseason games, so whenever you saw them play in September in regular season games, that was their first chance of playing NFL football. And so for me, these guys are really thrown into the deep end. And I think with more time this offseason. Obviously, OTAs are happening at the minute. More time to prepare, to learn the NFL, to learn the system, the team system. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they have a new vamp O-line. They have Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who opted out last year to go to Canada and work in a hospital during the pandemic. He's back, and also Damian Williams has gone to the Bears after he opted out, and so Clyde Edwards-Helaire has shoes to fill. Will he fill those shoes? I think he will, but we will find out.
We will find out. We will. And I've actually, to finish things off, I am going to give you another running back, a rookie running back. Is it any surprise that AJ Dillon's on this list? No, I don't think so. The Green Bay Packers running back, 23 years old, and he's out of Boston College. Now, AJ had 46 rushing attempts last year, and he gained 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wasn't really given that much of an opportunity. He was kind of in the depth chart behind the likes of Aaron Jones, who's good in his own right. He's a household name by now, and Jamal Williams, who has since moved to the Lions, opening up that second spot on the depth chart, which AJ Dillon will be more than capable to fulfill. He seemed to be a bit of a feature back last year for Green Bay. You look at the playoffs. He seemed to kind of come in third down situations, kind of red zone, and I think he will be given more of a role this year, more of a chance to succeed in a Green Bay team that is, well, it's stacked enough. It's got enough kind of offensive weapons to see them through. That is, if Aaron Rodgers comes back. But AJ Dillon, in his own right, I feel like he has, I don't want to say Pro Bowl because I've made that big claim about another player, Laviska Shenault, who's he's definitely worth it. But AJ Dillon isn't far behind him this year. And I think if all goes well, Green Bay could maybe even look at putting him as the starter next year if Aaron Jones decides to move on. Maybe they might get quite a lot in the trade for Aaron Jones. And then AJ Dillon's in that spot. Now, Zach, I know you have a funny name for AJ Dillon, maybe another T-shirt worthy name, as we mentioned earlier. Could you maybe provide me with that, and so the listeners can kind of hear what you're thinking about AJ?
Well, actually, I can't take any credit. It's definitely not my name. It's definitely a name that I have seen that Packers Twitter has called. And it turns out that AJ Dillon has even adopted this name, the Quad Father and Quadzilla.
Okay.
And I was reading actually that AJ Dillon has now decided to call one of his quads the Quad Father and the other quad Quadzilla. I like that.
You know what? I might go back on that decision after hearing that. I might have to kind of take his name out of the hat. But no. Well, that being said, he's still very much a threat on offense, and I think that he will have a breakout season this year.